The wind sliced through the trees like icy knives, and the streets of Maplewood were nearly empty except for the sound of rustling leaves and distant barking dogs. Emily Parker pulled into her driveway just past midnight, exhausted from her double shift at the diner. Her back ached, and her hands smelled faintly of burnt coffee and dish soap. All she wanted now was a warm shower and to collapse into bed. As she reached to grab her purse from the passenger seat, something in her headlights caught her eye. A shape, no, a man, stood motionless at the edge of her wooden fence, partially hidden by the shadows. He didn't move when the lights hit him. He just stood there, hunched in a long, dirty coat, with wild hair peeking from under a wool cap. Emily's heart skipped. Her first instinct was fear. She was alone, her kids were asleep inside, and here was a stranger just feet away. But then she noticed something odd. He wasn't looking at her or the house. He was staring down at the ground like he was unsure whether to take another step forward or turn and disappear into the night. She cautiously rolled down her car window halfway. "Sir," she said, her voice unsure but calm. "Are you all right?" The man looked up, startled. His eyes were tired but gentle, like someone who had seen far too much and expected very little. "I'm sorry," he replied softly. "Didn't mean to scare you. I was just looking for somewhere warm to stay the night. Just one night. I won't bother you. I'll leave before sunrise." Emily stayed quiet for a few seconds. Everything she had been taught screamed at her to drive into the garage, lock the door, and call the cops. But something deeper, something in her gut, held her still. Maybe it was the way he spoke without begging, or how he kept his distance, never even looking toward the house. "I don't have a room or anything," she said slowly. "But my garage is unlocked. There's an old blanket in the corner. It's not heated, but it's dry." The man blinked, as if stunned by her response. "You'd let me stay there. Just for tonight," she added firmly. "I have kids inside. I'm trusting you." He nodded quickly. "Of course. Thank you. Truly." She watched from her window as he walked slowly into the garage and carefully pulled the door almost closed, leaving it cracked slightly for air. Her stomach churned with nerves, and a part of her wondered if she had just made a terrible mistake. But another part, the part raised by her mother's quiet acts of kindness, told her she had done the right thing. Minutes turned into an hour. Unable to sleep, Emily tiptoed into the kitchen and peeked out toward the garage through the side window. The man hadn't touched a single thing. He had simply laid out the old blanket, curled up on the cold cement, and appeared to be fast asleep. She stood there in silence, feeling the heaters hum behind her and the bitterness of winter pressing against the glass in front of her. Her own mind wandered. What had brought him to this? He didn't look like most of the people she had seen panhandling downtown. His clothes, though worn, were once expensive. His posture, even as he slept, was controlled, like someone used to structure and order. The next morning would bring questions, she was sure. From her neighbors, maybe even from her kids. But for now, she felt an odd sense of peace. Maybe the world was still capable of small, quiet acts of mercy. And maybe, just maybe, this moment of trust would matter to someone who needed it more than she could ever know. The morning sun peeked through the frosted windows as Emily poured herself a cup of coffee, still thinking about the man in her garage. The house was quiet except for the faint creaks of her kids stirring upstairs. She stood by the kitchen sink, staring at the garage door with a strange mix of curiosity and concern. She wasn't sure what she expected to find when she opened it. Maybe he would be gone already, leaving only footprints on the dusty concrete. Maybe he would have taken the lawn tools or rummaged through her old boxes. But when she cautiously stepped inside, she found him sitting neatly on the edge of an overturned paint bucket, warming his hands with slow, thoughtful breaths. He stood the moment he saw her. "I didn't touch anything. I'm ready to leave now," he said gently, his voice even calmer in daylight. She handed him a paper cup. "It's just coffee. Nothing fancy." The man took it with both hands like it was a treasure. "Thank you again. For everything. I'll be out of your way in a minute." Emily tilted her head, studying him in the light. His clothes were frayed but not filthy. His boots were scuffed but not falling apart. His beard, though unkempt, had been trimmed at some point. His eyes were steady and clear. There was something different about him, something hard to place. You don't look like you belong on the streets, she said finally. He smiled faintly. Most people don't. You know what I mean. You speak well. You act careful, like someone who used to be in charge of things. The man chuckled softly and looked around the garage. Used to be, he echoed. A long time ago, I had a lot. Money, a house, even people who said they worked for me. Then I started asking myself what any of it meant. He sipped the coffee, and I couldn't find an answer that felt honest. Emily crossed her arms, unsure how to respond. So you walked away from it all? He nodded. Pretty much. I just wanted to see who I was without all the noise. She frowned. You're telling me you chose to be homeless? I chose to disappear, he corrected gently. There's a difference. It didn't make sense. Who in their right mind would leave a life of luxury to sleep in garages? Yet he didn't sound crazy. In fact, he sounded more grounded than anyone she'd met in years. Well, whether you're a monk or a runaway millionaire, she said, you should know most people wouldn't have done what I did. I know, he replied, standing up. That's what makes what you did so important. He set the empty cup down on her old workbench and turned to leave. As he reached the side door, he paused, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded napkin. This is all I have to leave behind, he said, placing it carefully on the table. It's not much, but keep it. Then he was gone, just like that. No name, no thanks beyond that soft-spoken voice. Emily stood alone in the garage, staring at the folded napkin. It looked ordinary, just a plain diner napkin, the kind she used to serve customers with ketchup stains. She picked it up hesitantly and unfolded it. Neat, elegant handwriting covered the inside. Thank you for your humanity. You'll be hearing from me. N.W. Her eyebrows furrowed. N.W. It meant nothing to her at first. But as she stared at the initials, something flickered in the back of her mind. She had seen them somewhere before. Maybe on a news channel. In a magazine. The whole thing felt strange. Why leave a note like that? Was it a joke? A code? A warning? She laughed nervously to herself and tucked the napkin into a drawer, deciding not to mention it to anyone, at least not yet. By the time the kids woke up and the day took over, she was already half convinced it had all been some strange dream. But that evening, as she wiped down the kitchen counters, a black car slowly pulled up in front of her modest house. Not just any car, a sleek, polished black Mercedes. The kind of car that didn't belong in her working-class neighborhood. Emily stood frozen as a man in a dark suit stepped out. He held a leather folder in his hand and walked straight toward her door. Something told her this wasn't the end of the story. It was only just beginning.